A man saves an orc girl trapped in quicksand. What she reveals is shocking. The wasteland had a sound, not silence. Silence would have been a mercy. No, the wasteland had the sound of wind dragging itself across dead earth, the whisper of sand shifting over bones that had been there so long nobody remembered whose bones they were. It was the kind of place where smart people didn't go and stupid people didn't come back from. Lorien Ashford was neither smart nor stupid. He was the third thing, desperate. And desperate men had a tendency to find themselves in places that made terrible sense at the time and absolutely none in hindsight. He'd been walking for 6 days. 6 days since the kingdom he'd served for 15 years decided his loyalty wasn't worth the armor he wore. 6 days since High Chancellor Ravencroft stood in that marble hall, adjusted those thin spectacles of his, and read the banishment decree like he was ordering breakfast. 6 days since Lorien learned that serving your kingdom faithfully meant exactly nothing when someone needed a scapegoat for a war going badly. The scar on his left shoulder ached. It always did when storms were coming. And judging by the way the sky looked, like a bruise that hadn't quite made up its mind about turning purple or black, a storm was definitely coming. That's when he heard it. The scream. Not a scream of surprise or anger. This was the scream of someone whose body had just sent an urgent message to their brain. We're dying, right now, this is it. It was raw and desperate and had the specific pitch of someone who knew they were alone and screaming anyway because what else could they do? Lorien's hand went to his sword. 15 years of training did that to you, made your body react before your brain caught up. But his brain was catching up now, and it was saying something very reasonable. Walk away. This isn't your problem. You're banished. You owe this world nothing. The scream came again. Closer now. Or maybe he'd started walking toward it without realizing. See, that was the problem with being a knight for 15 years. They trained the heroism into you so deep that even when they took away the title, the training stuck around like a scar that wouldn't fade. You could tell yourself you weren't a knight anymore. You could believe it even, but your feet would still carry you toward screams in the wasteland. He crested a ridge of red rock, and there she was. An orc girl, no, a woman, probably in her 20s, submerged up to her chest in what looked like sand but moved like something alive. Quicksand. The magical kind. The kind that didn't just pull you down, but seemed to savor it, taking its time like a predator playing with food it knew couldn't escape. She was struggling. Not panicking. There's a difference. Panic is all jerky movements and wasted energy. She was fighting smart, trying to spread her weight, trying to keep her arms free. She'd done this before, or at least knew how quicksand worked. But knowing how it worked and being able to escape it were two entirely different things. Her skin was green, that particular shade of forest green that orcs had, like moss on old stone. Her hair was black, tied back in warrior braids that were coming loose now, strands plastering to her face with sweat and sand. She had tusks, small ones, barely protruding past her lower lip. And her eyes found his. They were amber, the color of honey catching sunlight. And in them, Lorien saw something he hadn't expected. Not hope, but calculation. She was measuring him, deciding if screaming for help from a human was about to make her situation better or infinitely worse. Help, she said, not shouted, just said it, like she was testing the word to see if it still worked. Lorien's hand was still on his sword. Every piece of training he'd ever received was currently having a loud argument in his head. Orcs were the enemy. Orcs had killed thousands of his countrymen. Orcs were the reason the war started. Orcs were, please. The word came out smaller than the first. She was sinking, slowly but visibly now. The quicksand had reached her shoulders. 15 years of training said, walk away. But 16 years of being Lorien Ashford, before the knighthood, before the war, when he was just a kid who'd helped a trapped fox out of a hunter's snare because leaving things to suffer felt wrong. That part said something different. He moved before the argument in his head reached a conclusion. The rope on his pack wasn't great. 30 feet of hemp that had seen better days, frayed in 3 places, probably couldn't hold more than 200 pounds. Orcs were heavy. This one looked like she weighed around 180, maybe 200 with the armor and weapons she was clearly carrying under that sand. Can you catch? Lorien called out. She nodded. Her jaw was set in that particular way people's jaws set when they're trying very hard not to show how terrified they are. He tied a loop in one end, tested it twice, and threw. The rope sailed through the air with the kind of trajectory that looked elegant right up until it fell 6 feet short. Of course, Lorien muttered, reeling it back in. because nothing today can be simple. The orc woman didn't comment. She was conserving energy. Smart. Second throw. This one made it. She caught it with reflexes that reminded Lorien these weren't just any warriors. Orcs trained from childhood, same as knights did. Different methods, same result. People who could catch ropes mid-panic while being swallowed by enchanted sand. She looped it around her torso, under her arms. Good. She knew what she was doing. On 3, Lorien said, wrapping his end around his hands, bracing his feet against a rock that looked sturdy enough. 1. Wait, she said. He paused. If you're pulling me out to kill me, just say so now. Save us both the effort. Lorien blinked. Of all the things he'd expected her to say, that wasn't on the list. I'm not. He stopped. Started again. I'm pulling you out because you're stuck. What happens after that, we'll figure out after you're not drowning in magic sand. She studied him for a moment that felt much longer than it actually was, then nodded. 3, Lorien said and pulled. The quicksand didn't want to let go. It held on with the grip of something that viewed this orc as a meal it had already mentally seasoned and wasn't about to give up without a fight. Lorien's boots dug trenches in the ground. His shoulders screamed. The rope cut into his hands even through the leather of his gloves. For a terrible moment, nothing moved. Then, inch by inch, she rose. The quicksand made a sound. A wet, sucking sound of something disappointed. It pulled back, and suddenly Lorien was hauling not just her weight, but the weight of her plus however many gallons of magical sand had decided to come along for the ride. He pulled. She kicked, trying to leverage herself. The rope groaned. One of those frayed spots started unraveling. Faster would be good, she grunted. I'm open to suggestions. Lorien shot back, pulling harder. With a final disgusting slurp that sounded like a drunk trying to finish soup, the quicksand released her. She came flying out, stumbled, crashed into Lorien, and they both went down in a tangle of limbs, rope and sand that tasted like disappointment and smelled like sulfur. For a moment they just lay there, breathing, not dead. Which was an improvement over 10 seconds ago. She rolled off him first, sat up, looked at him, really looked at him this time, at his armor that still bore the crest of his kingdom, even though the kingdom didn't want him anymore, at the sword at his side, at the face of a man who'd just saved her life and seemed as surprised about it as she did. Why? She asked. Simple question. Complicated answer. Because you were screaming, Lorien said, sitting up and brushing sand out of his hair that would probably still be there 3 weeks from now. And walking away felt wrong. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who'd just discovered the universe had a sense of humor, and that sense of humor was specifically targeting her. A human knight, she said, risked his life to save an orc, in the wasteland, during a war. She shook her head. The gods are drunk, that's the only explanation. Former knight, Lorien corrected. Banished. As of 6 days ago. Her eyebrows rose. Well, the place where eyebrows would be if orcs had eyebrows. Banished? What did you do? Refused to burn a village full of civilians. Ah. She nodded like that made perfect sense. You got the wrong kind of conscience. That'll get you every time. They sat there for a moment. Two people who should have been enemies, united in the shared experience of being screwed over by the systems that were supposed to protect them. I'm Zorga, she said finally. Zorga Bloodpeak, of the Iron Ridge clan. Lorien Ashford, of nowhere, apparently. She stood, brushed sand off her armor. Proper orc armor, she realized. The kind made from layered leather and bone that could stop a sword strike and still be light enough to move in. She was checking herself for injuries, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. That's when Lorien saw it. A glint of green stone catching the dying sunlight. It was hanging from her neck on a leather cord, half hidden beneath her armor. The stone was broken, clearly once whole, now just a fragment, and there were marks on it. Runes. Zorga's hand went to it immediately, covering it, but too late. Their eyes met. That's old magic, Lorien said quietly. It's nothing. It's very specifically not nothing. Zorga's jaw tightened. Her hand stayed over the stone. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wasteland wind picked up, throwing sand against rock with a sound like whispered secrets. You pulled me out of the quicksand, Zorga said slowly, so I owe you truth. But truth is dangerous, especially this truth. So I'm going to ask you once. Do you really want to know? Lorien thought about it. He thought about 6 days of walking through the wasteland. Thought about Ravencroft polishing those spectacles in that marble hall. Thought about 15 years of killing people he was told to kill without asking if maybe there was a reason nobody wanted him asking questions. Yes, he said. Zorga pulled the stone out, held it up to the light. This, she said, is half of the treaty seal. The orc half. It's 300 years old, and it proves that everything they taught us, human and orc, about why we're at war, it's a lie. The words hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. What do you mean, a lie? Zorga sat back down. This was going to take a while. 300 years ago, she began. There was peace. Real peace. Not a truce, not a ceasefire. Actual coexistence. Humans and orcs had a treaty. This seal was the proof. Two halves. One orc, one human. When joined together, they created magic that prevented war between our species, made it physically impossible for us to organize armies against each other. Brilliant magic. Ancient magic. The kind nobody knows how to make anymore. Lorien's hand went unconsciously to his sword hilt. Not threatening, just thinking. If that existed, why did we? Because someone broke it. Zorga turned the stone fragment over in her hand. Deliberately. Shattered both pieces. Hid them. Erased the treaty from history books on both sides. And then, she met his eyes. Started the war. That's impossible. Why would? Think about it. Her voice was low, intense. Who benefits from war? From humans and orcs killing each other for generations? Not farmers, not common soldiers, but generals, nobles, merchants who sell swords and armor. War makes them rich and powerful. Peace makes them unnecessary. Lorien felt something cold settle in his stomach. He thought about Ravencroft, about the way the Chancellor had looked when he delivered the banishment decree. About how Ravencroft had grown richer while the war dragged on. About how every time peace talks were suggested, they mysteriously fell apart. You're saying the war is fake. No, the war is very real. People die real deaths. But the reason for the war? That's the fake part. We were taught orcs killed the human king's daughter and that started everything. Your people were taught we slaughtered a diplomatic envoy. Both lies. What actually happened? Someone broke the seal, made war possible again, and then created excuses to make it happen. How do you know all this? Zorga's expression darkened. My father is War Chief Drakmar Ironridge. He found the orc half of the seal 20 years ago, hidden in ruins nobody was supposed to explore. He spent years researching it, piecing together what it meant. And when he tried to tell the clan elders, when he tried to say we needed to find the human half and expose the truth, she swallowed hard. They called him a traitor, said he was making excuses for weakness. The war is profitable for orc warlords too. They didn't want peace. They wanted him silent. But you escaped. With this. She clutched the stone. He gave it to me 3 weeks ago. Told me to run. To find someone who would listen. To find the human half. Her voice cracked slightly. They killed him 2 days later. Made it look like he died in battle. But I know better. Lorien processed this. All of it. A 300-year-old lie. A war built on profit. Leaders on both sides actively preventing peace because peace meant losing power. The human half, he said slowly. Do you know where it is? Zorga pulled out a piece of folded leather from her armor. Opened it. It was a map. Old, detailed, with notes written in both Common and Orcish. My father spent years tracking it. The human half is in the capital. Your capital. Held in the royal vault beneath the castle. The place where they keep things they don't want found. Lorien stared at the map. At the vault location marked in red ink. At the notes about guard rotations and security measures. That's suicide, he said. The vault is beneath the throne room. It's guarded by the royal guard. It's impossible to break into, I know. Zorga folded the map back up, which is why I was trying to cross the wasteland. To find another way. To find someone in the human kingdoms who might listen. Who might care that this entire war is based on lies told by people who profit from our deaths. She laughed bitterly, and instead I got stuck in magic quicksand and saved by a banished knight who probably thinks I'm insane. Lorien didn't think she was insane. That was the problem. Everything she was saying made a horrible kind of sense. It explained things that never quite added up, like why peace talks always failed at the last minute, like why both sides seemed to find reasons to escalate just when de-escalation was possible. Like why Ravencroft had looked so pleased when he banished Lorien for refusing to burn civilians. War kept people like Ravencroft powerful. Peace would expose them. The vault, Lorien said quietly. I know how to get in. Zorga's head snapped toward him. What? I served in the Royal Guard for 3 years before they transferred me to Field Command. I know the vault, know the rotations, know the weak points. He smiled without humor. And as of 6 days ago, I have absolutely nothing to lose. You'd help me? An orc? I'd help you expose 300 years of lies that got good people killed so corrupt leaders could stay rich and powerful. Lorien stood, offered her his hand. The enemy isn't orcs or humans. It's the bastards who benefit from us hating each other. Zorga looked at his hand, at his face, at the honest anger in his eyes that matched her own. She took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. This is going to get us both killed, she said. Probably, Lorien agreed, but at least it'll be for something that matters. The storm that had been threatening finally arrived. Rain started falling, big fat drops that hit the sand like declarations of intent. Lightning forked across the purple sky. We need shelter, Zorga said, scanning the horizon. There's caves 2 miles east. We can plan there. Lead the way. They walked. A banished human knight and an orc carrying proof of the biggest lie in 3 centuries, heading into a storm that seemed appropriate given their circumstances. Behind them, the Quicksand continued its patient waiting for the next victim. It had time. The wasteland always did. The caves Zorga mentioned weren't so much caves as they were evidence that even rocks sometimes gave up. Large enough to keep the rain out, small enough to be defensible, and with the particular smell of places that had been shelter to many travelers and kept everyone's secrets. They built a small fire from dried brush Zorga had collected before the storm hit. The flames threw shadows on the cave walls that looked like they were reenacting the entire history of bad decisions that had led to this moment. So, Zorga said, warming her hands by the fire, you know the vault. What's the catch? Besides the 30 royal guards, the magical wards, and the fact that I'm probably on a wanted list now. Besides all that, Lorien pulled out his own map, less detailed than hers, but it showed the capital city and the kind of detail you only got from living there. The vault has 3 layers of security: physical guards, magical wards, and what they call the final lock, a mechanism that requires both a royal seal and a blood oath from someone with clearance. Do you have clearance? I did, 6 days ago. He traced a finger along the map. But clearance isn't instant revoke. The bureaucracy moves slow. Takes at least 2 weeks to process a full removal from the Royal Guard access list. If we move fast, my blood might still open the final lock. Zorga's eyes narrowed. Might. 60, maybe 70% chance. And if it doesn't work, then alarms go off. Guards flood the vault and we die badly. Your plans need work. I'm open to suggestions. She studied the map. Her finger traced paths, calculated distances, measured angles. This wasn't just a warrior. This was a tactician. Her father had trained her well. Here, she said, pointing to a section marked Merchant Quarter. These tunnels, they connect to the old sewage system, and the sewage system has maintenance access to the vault level. How do you know that? Because my father was thorough. He sent scouts. Most of them died getting this information, but they got it. Her voice was tight. The human half of the seal is in a chest marked with the royal crest, surrounded by magical wards designed to trigger if the chest is moved. But if we can disable the wards first, the ward room is 2 floors up from the vault, Lorien said, seeing where she was going. Separate security, lighter guard presence because most people don't know it exists. Can you disable magical wards? No, but I know someone who might help. Lorien's expression darkened. If she's still alive and if she hasn't decided I'm better off dead. Comforting. I've been banished for 6 days. Comfort isn't really on the menu. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Every detail, every contingency, every way this could go catastrophically wrong, which was most ways. The fire burned down to coals. The storm outside settled into a steady rain that sounded like the world sighing. Can I ask you something? Lorien said during a lull. Sure. Why you? Your father could have given the seal to any warrior. Why send you specifically? Zorga was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. Because I asked questions nobody else wanted to ask. Because I looked at our raids and wondered why we kept attacking villages that had nothing, burning crops that fed nobody important, killing people who couldn't fight back. I asked what we were accomplishing, who we were helping. She poked the coals with a stick. That's not popular. Warriors are supposed to follow orders, trust the war chief, believe the cause is just. I kept asking what cause, and my father saw that. Saw someone who wouldn't accept easy answers. Sounds familiar. The banishment, questioning orders, wondering who actually benefits, refusing to burn villages because burning villages didn't feel like justice, it felt like murder. Lorien smiled grimly. Conscience is expensive. Yeah. Zorga met his eyes across the dying fire. But the alternative is cheaper in the wrong ways. They sat in companionable silence. Two people from opposite sides of a war that shouldn't exist, united by the radical idea that maybe mass murder for profit was bad. Actually, we should sleep, Zorga said finally. Long walk tomorrow. You sleep first? I'll keep watch. Why, you think I'm going to murder you in your sleep? No. But someone might try to murder both of us, and I'm too tired to trust my reflexes. She laughed. A real laugh this time. Fair. Wake me in 4 hours. She settled against the cave wall, pulled her cloak around herself, and was asleep in minutes. Warriors training. Sleep when you can, because you never know when you can't. Lorien watched the rain. Thought about tomorrow. Thought about the vault and the seal and the enormous gamble they were about to take. Thought about how weird it was that he felt safer in a cave with an orc than he ever did in the royal court. Maybe that should have told him something years ago. The rain continued. The fire died to nothing but embers. And outside, the wasteland kept its secrets. For now, dawn in the wasteland was less, glorious sunrise, and more, the darkness reluctantly admitting defeat. The storm had passed, leaving behind mud and the smell of wet sand and the kind of humidity that made breathing feel like work. They walked, east first, then north, following paths that weren't really paths, but were the places where the ground was slightly less eager to kill you. Zorga moved like someone born to rough terrain. Lorien moved like someone who'd learned rough terrain through practice and stubbornness. So, Zorga said after an hour of walking, this person who might help with the wards, who is she? Senna, a wanderer, trader, information broker, knows more about magic than anyone I've met, including court wizards. Lorien ducked under a low-hanging rock formation. She helped me once when I was investigating. Something the court didn't want investigated. What were you investigating? Missing weapons shipments, swords and armor that were supposed to go to troops but kept disappearing. Turned out high-ranking officers were selling them to bandits. Let me guess, you reported it. I reported it. They arrested the whistleblower, promoted the officers, and transferred me to the most dangerous front they could find, hoping I'd die quietly. But you didn't. Disappointing everyone is my specialty. Zorga snorted. You'd fit right in with orcs. We appreciate spite. They kept walking. The wasteland gradually gave way to scrubland, then sparse forest, signs of life returning. A bird called somewhere. A rabbit bolted from bushes, the world deciding it didn't want to be dead anymore. Around midday they reached the edge of the Merchant Road, the main trade route that connected the southern kingdoms to the capital. Dangerous for a banished knight and an orc to travel openly, but faster than alternatives. We'll look like targets, Lorien said, eyeing the road. We are targets. Question is whether we're targets that look too dangerous to mess with. You suggesting we pretend to be more threatening than we are. I'm suggesting I'm a 7-foot orc carrying enough weapons to supply a small militia, and you're a scarred knight with murder eyes. I don't think we need to pretend. She had a point. They joined the road. Merchants passed them, some giving wide berth, some nodding cautiously. A wagon full of grain, a caravan of cloth traders, a group of mercenaries heading south who took one look at Zorga and decided north was suddenly more interesting. Nobody bothered them. By evening they reached the crossroads, a settlement that existed because travelers needed somewhere to sleep that wasn't the ground. Not a town, not a village. Just buildings clustered around an inn, a stable, and a general store that sold everything from rope to questionable meat pies. Senna operates out of the inn, Lorien said. Back room. Keep your hood up. They entered. The inn was exactly what you'd expect. Dim lighting, rough tables, rougher clientele. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions because they didn't want to answer any. Perfect. Lorien approached the innkeeper, a woman with gray hair and the expression of someone who'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. I need to see Senna, he said quietly. The innkeeper looked him over, looked at Zorga, raised an eyebrow. 20 silver, she said. For what? For not seeing you. Lorien put 20 silver on the bar. It vanished. Back room, left door. Knocked 3 times, then twice, then once. She turned away. Conversation over. They found the door. Lorien knocked the pattern. Enter, came a voice from inside. The room was small, packed with maps, books, magical artifacts, and one woman sitting at a desk covered in charts. She had dark skin, darker eyes, and was holding a small stone that glowed faintly blue. Senna looked up, saw Lorien. Her expression didn't change. "You're alive," she said. "How disappointing for your enemies." "Hello, Senna." "Hello, dead man walking." Her eyes shifted to Zorga. "And you brought a friend, an orc friend, in the middle of a war." "Subtle. I need your help. People who need my help usually do." Senna set the stone down. "Last I heard, you were banished. Something about refusing orders. Ravencroft's work, I assume. His signature was on the decree." "Of course it was. That man has signatures on more injustices than there are days in a year." She leaned back. "So, what do you need?" Lorien glanced at Zorga. She pulled out the seal fragment, set it on the desk. Senna's expression changed. The casual amusement vanished, replaced by sharp focus. She picked up the stone, turned it over, whispered something under her breath. "Where?" she said quietly. "Did you get this?" "It's a long story." "Then you'd better start talking." They told her. All of it. The quicksand, the seal, the 300-year lie, the vault, the plan that had approximately 1,000,000 ways to fail. Senna listened without interrupting, her fingers tracing the runes on the stone fragment. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Well," she said finally, "I always suspected the war was bullshit. Nice to have proof." She set the stone down carefully. "The vault wards. You need them disabled. Can you do it?" "Can I?" "Yes." "Will I survive the doing? That's the better question." Senna pulled out a worn journal, flipped through pages covered in notes. "Royal vault wards are linked to the crown itself. Tampering with them sends alerts to the court wizards. But," she tapped a page, "there's a window. Shift change for the ward maintenance crew. Happens every 7 days. Next one is..." She checked a calendar on her wall. 3 days from now. Midnight to 2 a.m. That's your window. 2 hours to break into the vault, disable the wards, retrieve the seal, and escape. "Correct. Any longer, and you'll be caught." Senna looked at them both. "This is insane. You know that." "Yes," Lorien said. "And you're doing it anyway." "Yes." "Why?" Zorga spoke up. "Because the war killed my father, killed thousands of people on both sides. Because children on both sides grow up learning to hate. Because this lie has gone on long enough, and someone needs to stop it." Senna studied her, then nodded slowly. "I'll help. Not because I think you'll succeed. You probably won't. But because..." She smiled grimly. "Sometimes you make the stupid choice because the alternative is living with yourself after making the smart one. And I'm tired of smart choices that feel like cowardice." She stood, started gathering items from shelves, ward breakers, nullification stones, tools Lorien didn't recognize. 3 days, Senna said. "Rest here. I'll prepare everything we need." "And Lorien?" "Yes? That 70% chance your blood works on the final lock? I'd estimate it's more like 40%. She met his eyes. "Probably should have led with that. Definitely should have led with that. But you're doing it anyway. What choice do I have?" "Smart choices," Senna said. "But we already covered why those feel like cowardice." They spent 3 days preparing. Senna taught them about wards, how to recognize them, how to avoid triggering them, how to disable them if absolutely necessary. Zorga sparred with Lorien in the woods behind the inn, testing reflexes, learning how the other fought. They memorized the map, every corridor, every guard post, every escape route. And they talked about war and peace, about families lost and futures uncertain, about how strange it was that they'd found friendship in the least likely place imaginable. On the 3rd night, Senna handed them each a small pendant. "Ward masks," she said. "They'll hide your magical signatures for about 6 hours. After that, they burn out and you're visible to every security spell in the city. Use them wisely." "Thank you," Lorien said. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me if you survive." Senna paused. "I mean that. Actually survive. Come back. Because this world needs more people who ask questions and fewer people who profit from answers nobody wants to hear." "We'll try," Zorga said. "Trying is good. Succeeding is better." Senna smiled. "Now get out. The capital is 3 days north. Be careful. Be smart. And if you do manage to pull this off..." She touched the seal fragment Zorga wore. "Change the world. It could use it." They left at dawn. The road north was well-traveled, which meant blending in was easier. Just 2 travelers among hundreds. Nobody looked twice at a knight and an orc traveling together. The world was stranger than it used to be. 3 days of walking. 3 days of getting closer to the capital, to the vault, to the moment where 40% chance would either be enough or they'd die trying to make it so. On the evening of the third day, they crested a hill, and there it was, the capital. Towers rising against the sunset, walls that had stood for 300 years. Somewhere in there, beneath marble halls and gilded chambers, was the other half of the truth. Last chance to turn back, Lorien said. You planning on turning back? No. Then why ask? Politeness. Zorga laughed. Your people's obsession with politeness is weird. But no, I'm not turning back. We do this. Together. Together, Lorien agreed. They descended the hill as the sun set, 2 figures against the dying light, heading toward the city that didn't know it was about to have its lies exposed. Or die trying. Mostly die trying if they were being honest. But they'd accepted worse odds before. The capital at night was beautiful in the way poisonous flowers are beautiful. Pretty enough to draw you in, dangerous enough to regret it. Lanterns lit cobblestone streets. Guards patrolled in pairs. Merchants closed shops while taverns opened. Everything functioning exactly as designed. Designed to protect secrets. Designed to keep order. Designed to prevent people like them from doing what they were about to do. They entered through the merchant gate using forged papers Senna had provided. The guard barely glanced at them. Just another knight and an orc mercenary. Not unusual. The war meant strange alliances were becoming less strange. They found lodging at an inn near the merchant quarter. Small room, single window, easy escape route, professional habits. Midnight, Lorien said, checking his equipment. Sword sharpened, daggers ready, ward mask around his neck. We meet Senna's contact at the tunnel's entrance. They'll guide us to the sewage access point. And if the contact doesn't show, then we improvise. I hate improvising. You'll love it once the adrenaline kicks in. That's the stupidest thing you've said this week. And you've said a lot of stupid things. They waited, hours crawling by like wounded animals. Finally, midnight arrived with the particular weight midnight always has when you're about to do something phenomenally stupid. They left the inn, moved through streets growing emptier as night deepened, reached the merchant quarter just as the cathedral bells tolled the hour. The contact was waiting. Young woman, couldn't be more than 20, wearing clothes that suggested poor merchant, but standing like trained fighter. Lorien Ashford, she said quietly. That's me. Senna sends her regards and says if you die, she'll be very annoyed. The woman gestured. Follow me. Stay quiet. Don't touch anything that glows. They followed, through alleys, downstairs, into tunnels that smelled like 300 years of questionable decisions. Water dripped, rats scattered. The stones beneath their feet had been old when the war started. This section, the woman said, pointing to a wall with faded markings. Behind here is the maintenance access. Code is 737. Change happens at midnight. You have until 2 a.m. After that, full security returns. Understood, Lorien said. Good luck. You'll need it. She turned to leave, paused. For what it's worth, I hope you expose every corrupt bastard in that vault. My father died in this war. Would be nice to know why. She vanished back into the tunnels. Lorien and Zorga stood before the wall. This was it. Ready? Lorien asked. No. You? Not even slightly. He smiled. Let's go. He pressed the stone blocks in sequence. 737. The wall groaned, shifted, revealed darkness beyond. They activated their ward masks. The pendants grew warm against their skin. Magic recognizing magic, hiding them from detection. They entered. The maintenance corridor was narrow, lit by dim magical crystals that pulsed like tired heartbeats. They followed it, counting doors according to Senna's map. Third door on the left. That's the ward room. The door was locked. Lorien produced pics he'd kept from his guard days. 60 seconds later, the lock clicked. Inside, the ward room looked like someone had asked, what if we made magical security as complicated as possible? And then committed to the bit. Crystals floating in midair, connected by threads of light. Circles drawn in silver on the floor. Papers covered in equations that hurt to look at. Senna had taught them what to do. Find the main conduit, disrupt the flow, create a gap in coverage lasting exactly 30 minutes. Easier described than accomplished. Zorga found the conduit, a large crystal pulsing blue-white, suspended in the room's center. Lorien pulled out the disruption stone Senna had given them. Small, black, felt wrong to hold. You sure about this? Zorga said. Too late for unsure. Lorien positioned the stone beneath the crystal. On 3. 1. Why does it always have to be 3? Because 2 is too few, and 4 is too many. 3. 2. They placed the disruption stone. It activated with a sound like glass breaking in reverse. The ward crystal dimmed. The threads of light flickered. And every magical security spell in the vault, for exactly 30 minutes, stopped looking quite so hard. Go, Lorien said. They ran, downstairs, through corridors, past storage rooms filled with treasures nobody remembered storing. The capital had been wealthy a long time. It showed. The vault door was exactly where the map said, end of the lowest corridor, behind a door marked with the royal seal. No guards. Shift change. 2-hour window. Perfect timing or perfect trap. Hard to say which. Lorien approached the final lock. It looked like someone had combined a mechanical lock with a blood oath and decided that wasn't quite secure enough. There was a keyhole, a handprint plate, and a circle that glowed faintly red. Blood first, then seal, Lorien said, pulling out a knife. He cut his palm, pressed it to the plate. The circle glowed brighter. Red became orange, became white. The lock clicked. It worked. Zorga breathed. 40% chance, Lorien said, bandaging his hand. Never tell me the odds. They opened the vault. Inside was everything the kingdom wanted hidden. Documents, artifacts. And there, on a pedestal in the center, surrounded by dormant wards, a chest bearing the royal crest. Zorga approached it carefully, opened it. Inside, wrapped in black cloth, was the other half of the seal. Silver where hers was green, scarred where hers was smooth, and covered in runes that matched her half exactly. She pulled it out, held it up to her piece. The two halves recognized each other. Even broken, even separated for 300 years, they knew. Light flickered between them. Not bright, just present, like meeting an old friend. We have it, Zorga said, voice tight with emotion. We actually have it. We have it, Lorien confirmed. Now we need to... The alarm went off. Not the wards. Those were still disabled. This was different. This was the sound of guards who'd just been told intruders were in the vault and that maybe coming to investigate was a good idea. That's early, Lorien said, drawing his sword. You think? Footsteps echoed above. Many footsteps. Getting closer. Windows blown, Lorien said. We fight through or we die here. I vote fight through. Seconded, let's... The vault door burst open. 12 guards. Full armor. Drawn swords. And behind them, adjusting his spectacles in that particular way he had, High Chancellor Ravencroft. Well, Ravencroft said mildly. This is inconvenient. Lorien's grip tightened on his sword. Ravencroft. Sir Lorien. Or should I say former Sir Lorien? I keep forgetting. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. When we heard someone had disabled the wards, I suspected. But I told myself no. Surely our banished knight wouldn't be so foolish. Yet here you are. Exceeding expectations. The seal, Lorien said flatly. You knew about it. Oh, I've known for 30 years, since I first became Chancellor. It's in the records, if you know where to look. Ravencroft's smile widened. I even know where the orc half is. Was. Your friend there is Drakmar's daughter, yes? He was quite the researcher. Shame about his death. Zorga's hand went to her weapon. You killed him. I made a few suggestions to orc leadership about potential traitors in their midst. What they did with that information was their choice. He shrugged. The seal is dangerous. Not because it exists, but because what it proves. That peace is possible. That war is profitable. That certain people have been lying for generations. Can't have that exposed. Bad for business. You murdered thousands, Lorien said. For business. I preserved order. The war keeps the military employed, the nobility powerful, the merchants rich. Everyone benefits. Well, everyone who matters. Ravencroft gestured. So here's what happens next. You give me both halves of the seal. I'll have them destroyed properly this time. And you'll die quietly, as you should have done 6 days ago. The guards advanced. Lorien and Zorga stood back to back, 2 against 12. Terrible odds. But then terrible odds were kind of their specialty at this point. On my mark, Lorien said quietly. Do we have a mark? We'll know it when we see it. The guards charged. What followed wasn't elegant. Real fights never are. It was desperate and messy and involved significantly more blood than anyone wanted. Lorien fought the way 15 years of training taught him. Efficient, brutal, aiming for gaps in armor and weak points in stance. Zorga fought the way orcs fought. Pure ferocity channeled through warrior discipline. Every strike meant to end the fight. They dropped 3 guards in the first 30 seconds, 2 more in the minute after that. But the rest adapted, surrounded them, cut off escape routes. Lorien took a sword to the shoulder. Zorga took a spear across the ribs. They kept fighting because stopping meant dying, and dying meant Ravencroft won. That's when the explosion happened. Not in the vault. Above them. The sound of stone breaking and something very large and very angry making entrance where entrance wasn't invited. Everyone stopped, looked up. What? Ravencroft said slowly. Was that? The answer came in the form of a war horn. An orc war horn. The sound shook dust from the ceiling. No, Ravencroft breathed. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible. Because through the hole in the ceiling, a hole that was definitely not there before, came orcs. Dozens of them. Led by an orc who was 8 feet of muscle and fury wearing armor that had seen 1,000 battles and won most of them. War Chief Drakmar Ironridge. Zorga's eyes went wide. Father? Hello, daughter, Drakmar said, landing in the vault with the grace of someone who'd jumped off walls before. Sorry I'm late. Death took longer to get over than expected. He wasn't alone. Behind him, more orcs, and behind them, something that made Lorien's brain temporarily stop working. Humans. Human soldiers. Wearing different uniforms. Following the orcs. What? Lorien started. Long story, Drakmar said. Short version, I didn't die. I faked death. Spent 3 weeks gathering allies on both sides who were tired of the war. Turns out there's a lot of us. He grinned at Ravencroft. Surprise. Ravencroft's face had gone pale. This is treason. No, Drakmar said. This is revolution. The royal guards didn't know what to do. Fight orcs and humans together. That wasn't in the training manual. They hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. The combined force of orcs and humans swept through the vault. Not killing, disarming, capturing, making very clear that this fight was over and which side lost. Ravencroft tried to run. Got exactly 3 steps before an orc warrior the size of a small building picked him up by the back of his robes. Put me down! I demand— You demand nothing, Drakmar said, walking over. You're going to trial, both kingdoms, together, for crimes against both our people. He looked at the seal fragments. My daughter has proof of what you did, what you all did. The lies, the manipulation, the centuries of murder for profit. It ends tonight. Zorga was staring at her father. You're alive, and very proud. Drakmar smiled, a genuine smile, warm and deep. You did it, little warrior. You found the human half. You survived. You made allies. His eyes shifted to Lorien. You're the knight? Former knight, Lorien said. Lorien Ashford. The man who saved my daughter from Quicksand, helped her cross the wasteland, and broke into the most secure vault in the kingdom to expose 3 centuries of lies. Yes, that's accurate. Drakmar studied him, then laughed. A huge, booming laugh that echoed off the vault walls. You're all right, former knight. He clapped Lorien on the shoulder, which nearly knocked him over. Welcome to the revolution. The next hours were chaos. Arrests, revelations. The seal fragments brought together for the first time in 300 years. When they touched, when they united, they didn't just glow. They sang. A sound like crystal chimes mixed with deep drums, magic recognizing completion. And in that moment, everyone in the vault, human and orc, felt it. The lie breaking, the truth emerging, the weight of centuries lifting. They didn't fight. They couldn't. The magic of the seal made it impossible for them to raise weapons against each other. Not control, not compulsion. Just the absence of the option. Peace wasn't enforced. War was prevented. How long does it last? Someone asked. Drakmar held up the complete seal. Forever. Or until someone breaks it again. But this time, he looked around at the gathered humans and orcs, at the alliances forming in real time, at the old world dying and new one being born. This time we'll know to protect it. Dawn came. Not in the vault, but outside where the sun didn't care about revolutions or treaties or 300-year lies. It just rose because that's what suns do. Lorien and Zorga stood on the castle walls, looking out over the capital. Below, the news was spreading. The war was over. Not through defeat or surrender, but through truth. Your father's alive, Lorien said. That's good. He faked his death, led a secret revolution, and broke into the royal vault with a combined human-orc army. That's not good. Zorga smiled. That's incredible. Fair point. They were quiet for a moment. Two people who'd started as enemies, become allies, and were now, what? Friends felt too simple. Family felt too soon. Something new that didn't have a word yet. So what now? Zorga asked. Now? Lorien looked at the sunrise. Now we rebuild. Both kingdoms. Together. Make sure the peace sticks. Make sure the next generation doesn't grow up learning to hate. That's going to take decades. Probably. Might not even work. Might not. But we're doing it anyway. What choice do we have? Zorga pulled out the completed seal. It pulsed gently in her hands, green and silver light mixing, creating something new. Something that had been broken and was now whole. The bravest warriors, she said quietly, aren't those who never feel fear. They're the ones who choose peace despite it. Where'd you hear that? Someone wise told me. Probably. She smiled. Come on, they're gathering the councils. Both sides. First joint session in 300 years. We should be there. Probably should, Lorien agreed. They walked. Two people who'd changed the world through the radical act of refusing to accept that enemies had to stay enemies. Behind them, the sun continued rising, indifferent to history but making new light anyway. The world didn't change overnight. It never does. Peace was messy and slow and involved thousands of small choices made by millions of people. But they'd started something. Lorien and Zorga and Drakmar and Senna and everyone who'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. Some victories are won not on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when we choose others over ourselves. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pull someone from quicksand, even when everyone tells you they're supposed to be your enemy, especially then. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more tales of unexpected alliances, impossible choices, and the kind of courage that changes worlds. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a sword, it's the truth. What would you do if you discovered your entire world was built on a lie? Leave a comment below.